Hi, I'm Ashley with Campbell. Thanks for investing your time to help your community be a great place to live. Before you watch the video, make sure to click the subscribe button so that we can help you make educated decisions as a board member.
Okay, my name is Rudy Forjan. I've been with Benjamin Moore for 36 years. I've been in the painting business since I was 16. So I've been doing this for a couple of years. And one of the I actually put this CEU together based on the projects that I've worked on over the years. It's there's been a lot of different. I've been through different projects, and when you see projects going the wrong way, a lot of it is due to improper planning, not doing vetting, not understanding what's coming. So this is part of this is the reason why I put this class together. You're not going to find anything that's going to be earth shaking here. It's pretty much common sense stuff. In regards to a project, a painting project, and painting projects are usually about usually one of your top five or higher projects that you're doing in your community. So it's important for all of us to spend the money wisely and to make sure that you're spending the money the way it should be spent on a project like this. But proper planning has always shown to me to be the way to get the best results instead of just leaving it into the hands of people. So there are no shortcuts here. You're not going to get anything that's going to be surprising. It's no magic wand I'm waving that you're going to, no secret that I have that you're going to be able to all of a sudden say, wow, look how easy it is to do this paint project. And it isn't. But I am going to give you some steps and a process on what to follow. Obviously, you don't need to follow everything. The principles that I'll be going over on this is going to be very similar to the principles that you should use on any large project that you're doing in your community. And so this is the process that we'll be going through. So as we get started, we'll go. This will be the CEU numbers. As Hikari was saying, I will be sending out the CEUs. The property managers that are on the online, make sure that your CAM number is properly put in, and then we'll send it out. Please allow me in my office probably about a week or so to get it up to the state of Florida and get it processed. So that, and then also at the same time, as we move forward, go ahead, as Hikari was mentioning, go ahead and put your questions into the Q&A, and then we'll wait till the end to answer the questions so we can get through all the material that we have here. And if by any chance we run out of time, because Hikari and I agreed to get you out of here before 4 p.m. No, sorry, 1 p.m. So we'd like to get you out here on time, and I will be able to follow up with any kind of questions or answers of any of the questions that you have and so forth. So as we get started, let's talk about this again. The whole idea of the project was just to kind of get you an idea, kind of a process to follow when you're going to paint your HOA or your condominium or your building. It's important to know the process ahead of time so that you're able to know the answer before the questions is asked. I think when doing a project, I think that's a really important part to understand, is to know that part, is to understand that. So by doing your due diligence and your vetting, you're going to be able to get a lot of the answers so that when you ask questions, you're going to know the answers, and you're going to know who are the ones that are playing ball the way they should be playing, and who are the ones that are playing ball the way they shouldn't be playing, and the ones to avoid. So that's kind of the whole idea behind this, and the process of how to get through this project and so forth to make it easier for the community and to get the value that you want after spending the money. I've been too many times over the years seen projects spend thousands and thousands of dollars of a painting project and nothing, and at the end of the day, no inspection was done, nothing was done right, and the job is not what it's supposed to be, and it doesn't last anywhere near as long as the job was promised to do it. So to get started, why do you repaint? The biggest reason why you want to repaint, of course, is aesthetics. We want our building, our HOAs to look good, and it helps raise the community value. It helps raise the cost, and lo and behold, these in the days that we've been facing, we need every single help that we can to keep our property values at the top end of the market itself. And color is a really important way how to keep a building looking from dated back into the 80s to dated now into the 2000s, so into the 2020. So it's important that you do that as well. So it's good to, that's why most of us want to paint. And at the same time, my biggest reason why a community should paint is for the protection of the building. Imagine a world where you had no paint on the building. All the building materials used in all the buildings and homes are all made to get a protective coating on top of it. Imagine without it. I'm of Cuban descent, and I came when I was 3 years old, but I've seen pictures of Havana where no painting has been done, especially in the older section, and you see the condition of the buildings and everything there. So that's kind of what you'll run into if you don't think as paint as protection, and that's what foremost it should be. So the first questions I always get asked is, when do we start preparing for the next paint job? And I always say, do it at the end, as soon as the last paint job ends. Don't wait. File everything away. Make sure you have your contracts, you have your warranties, you have the materials you use, because you want to be able to compare down the road as you're going through the project. You want to make a comparison and not hire the same contractor that gave you all kinds of issues. And I've seen that happen over and over again. Don't use the same material if there's a failure, if there's a product, if there's a system that doesn't work. So it helps you to be able to kind of get that set. And even if you're not going to be the manager or you're going to be in the board of the next time it happens, it's the right thing to do to pass that information along so that future boards could spend their money wisely and avoid issues. It's incredible how many times I've seen the same painting contractor that they almost went to a lawsuit being hired again for the next cycle. It's amazing. So, and then of course the planning, like anything else in our life, when we plan, it leads to more effective use of our funds, and in this sense, in the community fund. So it's really important to plan and prepare for that. So the way that we do that, the first thing I like to recommend is if you have a board, since volunteering is such a big thing that we have so many people clamoring to volunteer, create a paint committee of at least 3 to 5 people, and keep it odd as like you do with any committee so that votes could be won. But creating a paint committee allows that committee or that those people to be able to vet and go through and understand. And if it's the board, they have a better choice to make decisions. And if it's not the board, the committee could bring that information to the board so that the board can make wiser decisions when they're making their choices and regarding everything we're going to be covering here. So some of the key elements when you're planning the planning phase, when you're going to start painting, of course, is identify when the painting is required. Life of the coatings down in South Florida right now are anywhere between 8 to 10 years. That's the technology. You will find warranties that say the paint's going to last 12 to 15 years, but we're going to touch base on this in just a little bit. If you read the warranty, you're going to be shocked at exactly what that warranty covers and actually how little it covers. So the whole idea behind my strategy of doing this is that act like there is no warranty, that you want to get the best job possible and the best way done. And preparation, using the right contractor, using the best materials, the right materials, not just necessarily the best, is going to be 80 to 90% the success of a job. So understanding that, knowing those answers before you ask the questions is going to make you a big deal. Unfortunately, we live in the state of Florida, and we are dealing with the fallout from the issues that happened down south in Surfside. So there's a lot of state funds and so forth. So right now, a lot of times in these older buildings, if you're doing structural repairs, they're going to have those structural repairs probably about every. You're going to have to be required to do them probably at least a minimum of every 10 years, if not before. So what ends up happening now is that the paint cycle is starting to marry the structural repair, especially in condominium buildings, because you don't want to do concrete patches and leave the concrete patches unpainted, because that's not going to be good for the concrete patches. or B, just paint the concrete patches, because then you're going to have a polka dot building wherever the concrete patches are at. So you want to be able to get past all that, and do and to know that's going when to do that itself. And then also you want to have the idea, want to know what to set the funds aside. How much is that going to cost you? Again, being one of the top 5 projects in your community or in your building, it's a lot of money, and you want to make sure that you're going to get this thing done right. And you're going to, unfortunately, myself and the contractors and we don't work for just for charity. There is a cost for it, so we need to do that and pay that responsibly. And then when do you start thinking about painting? Well, if you have the idea when you painted it last time, if it's an 8 or 10-year warranty, you need to start thinking about it. And after about 8 to 10 years, look at the building and start planning it. I like to always suggest at least 6 months out to start the planning of the painting project. And if you're going to change colors, even go back further, because a lot of the documents and so forth that you go through and you understand, it requires a lot of, sometimes anywhere from a 60 to 75% vote on some documents to change colors. So you have to be able to, that takes a long time to do the process, to pick the colors and then to get the colors approved. So make yourself right. I've had different opportunities where a building is getting, a community is getting painted. And then 2 months before they said, well, why don't we think about using a different color? And all of a sudden we pull out the docs and they need a 60 to 70% requirement for voting, and the color stays the same for the paint project. So if you're going to do that, again, that's part of the planning process to get out. And then, of course, a reserve study. And all of us know what a reserve study is, obviously, especially in the day and age that we're working with today, but it's not always been the case. But just for, just a kind of a review, a reserve study is really just a forecast and the budget for some of the major HOA projects, HOA or condominium building projects you're going to have in your community. It's going to include anything like major repair costs and so forth, replacement costs for different things, or upgrading the colors. I work with some communities that actually live in the community that actually sets aside as part of they set aside a reserve for painting on an every 8-year cycle that they're doing on and HOAs generally go about an 8-year cycle instead of the 10-year cycle with the building. So, and of course, all this helps maintain your reserve study. And the day that we're living with today, with all the costs escalating and all these different issues coming because of the construction work that we're doing, having a reserve study is going to be important. I know that when I purchased my home, I never asked what the reserves are of a community or a building. But you know what? If I ever have to do that now, that's going to be one of the first questions I'm going to ask, is to do that, and that's going to help me determine whether I'm going to buy in that community or not. And so that's a real important thing to do. A lot of managers do reserve studies, but I always encourage you. There are a lot of professionals out there that all they do is reserve studies. Get them to help you out to budget properly so that you have the funds and you have the money to be able to go through the process itself. This is a thing that a lot of managers and a lot of people don't quite understand. A lot of you do, but Florida has a construction lien law, and it is a fact. It's something that we have to live with and something that we deal with, and there's no way around it. And basically, I have some pieces of paper or different documents that I'm going to be able to send you. I have the latest kind of synopsis from the state of Florida regarding construction lien laws that will be sent out to you after the presentation. But essentially, what the construction lien laws do is give the right to the suppliers, either the material suppliers or the sub-supply, the subcontractors, to be able to put a lien or demand if they don't get paid by the contractor who's actually doing the work. So one of the things that we have to understand, and one of these things, the thing that I do recommend here is always work with an attorney when you're looking at this, when you're looking at the when you're talking about the lien laws. And it's one of the questions that you want to ask your supplier if they do liens, if they use the lien laws, and also if the contractor, if they have subs. The contractor themselves that you sign with cannot, they're not going to put a lien on you, but their subs will. So in other words, you'll be able to get, if you get a notice to owner from a supplier or a sub when the work gets started, and then there's some outlines that we have to follow when we're doing that. That means that supplier and sub is putting you on notice that they have a right to lien your property if they don't get paid. Attorneys will give you all the details on this, but it's important to understand it. One of the things that happens, and I've seen a lot of mistakes happens on this, is that a contractor will come to the manager, say, hey, I want partial payments like that all these big projects usually do. They'll go ahead and finish, say, I finished the first 10 buildings or the 10 homes. I want payment for those 10 homes after we did the completion of the work. Well, if you get a notice to owner from a supplier or a sub, before you send that payment to that contractor, even for say like the 10 homes or a partial payment, you need to make sure that contractor is supplying you with a partial release of lien from that supplier who put the notice to owner and or the subs that put that notice to owner, if you have it. If they don't have, if you did not receive a notice to owner, then you're not getting notice that there's lien in your property. But the fact of the matter is, this is a state law. This is not going away. The best way to protect it is to make sure that you're understanding it and you're looking at everything the way that understand the law itself. Again, work with your attorneys, work with it to have them understand, but make sure that if you do get those notices to owner, that you're getting those signed releases of lien. I had one particular situation where the contractor had the manager, they gave them a release of lien from themselves as a contractor, which really didn't do anything for them at all. So that's something that you have to be aware of. So understand lien laws and make sure it's a major part, and not only the paint project, any major project that you're doing on your community, that's what the lien laws are a part of. So make sure you understand that. All right, so let's move on to some product considerations. When you start looking at the project, you got to start considering, is this going to be an update? It's going to be an overhaul. Understand the state of Florida the state of Florida laws regarding condominiums. A lot of times when you want to change color, make sure you understand where the votes are needed. Sometimes local ordinances or master association approval is needed for color. So for any kind of material change like that. A lot of the condominiums, the structural work needed, that goes without saying. But when the other thing you want to look at if you're considering colors, understand what the fixed colors are. And what do I mean by fixed colors? I'm meaning roof colors, window colors, things that are not going to get painted and so forth. You consider things like road dirt or high traffic areas. I've had buildings painted. I've had buildings painted in the past where a building was painted, and then right next door, within 6 months, they started constructing a condominium building. Again, they tore down the building that was there, and they built a new one. Consequently, they went through a whole fight and process, and the developer of the new building ended up paying to have the building repainted. But what a nightmare it was to get through there. So if you're in a condo, just make sure and just do a study, make sure that there's other things in the area that are not going to affect the paint project that you're going to be working on itself. And we already spoke about the number of the paint committee, and any committee, always odd numbers, makes it a lot easier to make a choice and so forth. So structural safety, and this is especially for the buildings. Unfortunately, we know that it's been the talk of the town, and even the governor is having to do some work on this because it's an issue. It's a big issue. We have a lot of buildings in South Florida, and we have a lot of buildings that are older buildings. A lot of the things when Surfside did happen, the first thing that happened that I didn't realize is that the board members of each community has a fiduciary responsibility for the safety of that building. And that's a lot of responsibility. Not to scare any of your board members off, but it's just a matter of making sure that, hey, let's don't kick the can down the road, which ended up leading to the situation in Champlain Towers. But at least let's take responsibility. Education, that's your best defense, knowing that you have to be able to to understand what's going on and to be able to make the right choices. It's all about knowing the answers before the question is asked. And that's where this comes to. So one of the things that I ideally think can recommend is have a go-to professional. There's a lot of structural engineers out there now, and there's a lot of them, but they, get one that's reputable, get one at least that's working with you so that you could call on, and especially if you have any kind of questions on the community itself. But again, I always go back to Champlain Towers can never happen again. It cannot. And the state is going to do everything in this process to happen, to not to let that happen again. So always, always give life safety issues your top priority. It has to be. And we're being told that it has to be that way as well. So I'm going to skip these questions in regards, just so we could get through and get the information out to you. So the biggest thing we were talking about when we first started is a color change warranted? When you're going to paint, are you going to change colors? And you've got to be able to understand that. Start to understand all those things, all the requirements that are, that are needed if you're going to have a color change. The votes, the community that you're in. Is the POA going to allow the color changes without doing a lot of work? So if you're going to consider changing colors, start early. It's never too, you don't have to get a paint proposal from a painting contractor to start working on this. You could work with manufacturers and with so forth. And then I've got color consultation and color rendering. There's generally two different types of service that we were able to help you with. Color consultation, of course, is that, hey, you've got a committee. I have no idea what color we want to go with. I don't know how to pick colors. I need a professional to help me out. This could be a decorator. There are color consultants out there that can help you be able to pick colors as well. And then there are color renderings, and basically all that is a digital photograph where we superimpose the colors that you're thinking about using on the building on the photograph. It's not a perfect rendition of what the color is going to look like, but it gives you an idea of what that building will look like afterwards. Putting samples up on the wall is always the best way to do that. And again, if your paint committee, if you have enough, you got all those volunteers clamoring at your door, knocking on your door saying, hey, I want to help. Consider a subcommittee for color selection, because again, color is the most emotional part, as a lot of you have been involved with. I've been in meetings when we're talking about color, the subject of blood comes up with the subject of I'm moving out, and I've actually seen people move out if they don't get their colors. The danger with subcommittee for colors is that keep it small, and you cannot have somebody on the subcommittee that has an agenda to drive the color that they want. It has to be what's best for the community itself. So that's the thing that happens itself. When you're looking at colors itself, one of the ideas that you want to do that is get a true gray swatch and put that behind the color that you're looking at. And what that does, it helps you understand undertones. And what I mean by undertones is that you have say a pink. Well, let's just for lack of terms, you have a pink, and when you put a gray swatch behind it, each color that you look at, regardless if it's blue, gray, beige, whatever, has an undertone, and that undertone is going to be that it's going to lean a little bit towards the warm colors, towards the red or yellow tone, or towards the kind of cool color. So it's going to be kind of green and blue. So understand that to be able to look at that. When you're picking colors, the green shades are not that popular down here right now, and a lot of the reason behind that is that you paint homes in green or a greenish color, and you've got a lot of beautiful foliage, which we have in South Florida, the home disappears. So it doesn't stand out. So you want to be able to be avoid of that, kind of aware of that, and then avoid dark on dark hues, because you don't get any kind of change in color itself. Right now, dark and the kind of a light color with dark trim is not really popular, just subtle differences like that. But a color consultant will be able to help you out and be able to figure that out for you. When I say consider the sun's temperature, is look at the color throughout the day. In other words, the sun is at different angles through the day, and the color on your building or your house will look different throughout the day and on cloudy days and so forth. So make sure that you understand that when you look picking a color, that color will change. The other thing is that the way we see colors are different. We see colors differently now. And as you age, you see colors differently. So you got to be able to understand that, and then understand this part. Everything fades outside. The warranties, we're going to go over that in just a sec here. The warranties are great, but warranties don't cover excessive fading. In South Florida, if you paint anywhere in the state of Florida with any kind of sun, you're going to get fading. So the deeper the color you go with, the more fading you're going to see. The lighter color that you go with, the less fading you're going to see. So that's what really helps when you're understanding and picking on colors and so forth. Make sure that when you start looking at contract, when you start picking out your paint manufacturers, product drawdowns are essentially just a sheet of paper. All colors today by all manufacturers are mixed. Nothing comes ready mixed. Heck, there's even some companies that don't even have a white that's ready mixed. So and white's a color too. So make sure that one white is not the same white all across the board. So most of the colors are mixed. So it's like making a recipe and baking a cake or doing whatever. Make sure that when they mix a color, that you're getting these drawdown sheets to sign off of. And what this does is gives the onus to the supplier to make sure that every time they mix a can of paint, the paint comes out that way. It gives onus to the contractor when they're applying the paint that they're applying the right color. If the store makes a mistake and sends out a black when they're supposed to use a blue like you're seeing on the screen here, and the contractor doesn't pay attention, just puts it on all black, do the inspection, and then you say, hey, you put the wrong color on here. Is it the paint store's complete fault that the contractor didn't do their part as well? So that's why it's a good idea it's a really important part. In fact, the supplier that I work with down here in South Florida will not send out a can of paint until they have a signed drawdown on file, and they give a copy to the store, keep a copy at the store to the contractor, and one for the board or the property manager. They keep as part of the process for using colors and making sure what colors are being used. Now, at this step of the process, one of the biggest things I recommend is that go through a vetting process to select a painting manufacturer. If you were to go out after doing all this work with colors, and then you're going to start figuring and then just start calling contractors, if you get 5 contractors, you're going to get 5 different ways of how to paint the building. And you don't want that. The warranties, and the reason is that the warranties, not only the warranties for the paint comes from the manufacturer. So why are you going to leave it to the hands of the painting contractor to be able to tell you how to do the building? So go to the manufacturer, let the manufacturer tell you how to put those things together. Vet the manufacturer. In other words, go through a process. And I have a handout sheet as well that we could send you regarding how to select a manufacturer and the specific questions to ask them so you can get the answers that you need. Again, remember, know the answer before you ask the question so that you be able to have the specifications. And then also one of the things that when you have a manufacturer, as a supplier, we give a lot of services that are no charge just for using the paint itself. And paint is only about 20% about the cost of the total project when it comes to painting. So it's a minor part of it, but we do a lot to be able to get that service there. It's a very competitive field. So take advantage of that for yourselves to use those suppliers and the manufacturers that are going to help you out. A lot of manufacturers can help you work, recommend engineers for your building. Painting contractors as well that will be able to go through the process as you'll see here, and then it'll help you keep record keeping, and then understand where the material is going to be coming from. Most of the buildings that you work with are going to have maintenance issues. Time and time again, I see paint being brought in for a project from a store that's maybe 50 to 60 miles away. Now, what happens when you're going to be doing maintenance work? You're going to go to your local store. Well, if they don't remember those drawdown sheets I was telling you about, if they don't have a drawdown sheets, those colors and mixing the colors like baking a cake, everything comes out slightly different. And with paint, it becomes the same way. Like in wallpaper and floors, you have run numbers. Make sure you're buying from a store that's close to you so that you don't have to send your maintenance people 2 hours down the road to pick something up, fighting the traffic to get some material down. So, and then price wise, in this area, we're a very urban area. The pricing and the issues from the stores and suppliers come on a regular basis. So I always recommend get the store that's closest to your store as possible, or at least very close to your place, so that they can help you. And then the other part is, are they going to assist in project management? What part of project management that they're going to work with? And I think that's a real important part that you have to look at. The specifications, a lot of you have already seen specifications itself, but the specifications in it could be anywhere from a 5 or 6 page document up to 20 pages. And all it does, it kind of looks a little bit like this. It talks about areas to, it's usually a custom made specifications. What this ends up being is your instructions. You as the customer will tell the contractor, this is what I want you to do. I don't want to see what you tell me what I need. I'm going to have the manufacturer tell me, and this is what I want you to do. So that way, what happens is that, first of all, you're going to get apple to apple considerations. Instead of getting a variety of different bids, you're going to get apple to apple comparison. Makes it easier to choose between one customer and the other. The way that the scope, that the specification is built by the scope of work, what's included, what's not included, special instructions, everything is custom made, tailored to your property, so that way the job is done right the first time, and there's no questions or no surprises as the building goes along. So again, it's an important part, and I think that it's easy to be able to do that. And then when you're looking at when you start getting into the contractors, I'm going to start talking about this in a little bit. Make sure that the supervisor, if you get down to selecting a contractor, make sure that the supervisor who's going to be on that job has a copy of the specs in their hands. You don't know how many times I've seen a job being done and the contractor only knows where the paint's coming from. They don't know nothing else. So make sure that the guys on site doing the work understand where everything is coming from. And again, we talked a little bit about this, but you know, there's a lot of manufacturers that will give services. When you do the interview process, you'll find out what they could do for you and how they could do things and so forth. A lot of suppliers will help you with colors and help you with color consultants and so forth. So that's something that that can be very expensive, and it can save you a lot of money if you do it that way. So, and then of course to keep numbers, locations. Some suppliers will give you community discounts for the paint for the community if they want to buy paint afterwards and so forth. This is one of my pet peeves, and I'm not going to say this as a supplier saying I'm trying to get out of things, but read your paint warranties. Warranties go from 5 to 15 years and everywhere in between. Most warranties, in fact, the warranties that we're going to be dealing with on your building, unless you use a specific metal paint that's very expensive, most warranties will only apply to the masonry surfaces. It's not going to apply to wood, it's not going to apply to metal, and it's not going to apply to concrete floors. There's a whole other world of that type of things being done on there. Fading is not necessarily covered by the warranty. Chalking is not covered. And I could get into very detail, but we don't want to finish at 4 o'clock this afternoon. So we have to do that. Peeling and flaking, there's a good chance that it's not going to be covered if it's caused by another coat of paint. The one thing I always like to tell people is that when you put a coat of paint, you're repainting. You're not painting, you're repainting. So the contractor, the paint supplier, everyone is depending on the existing coat of paint for adhesion. But if that previous stuff begins to fall off, there's a problem that's not covered by the warranty. And it says so in the warranties and the specifications. So it's not that we're trying to cover it up. Just a lot of times don't say anything about it. The question's not asked, and that's not right either. So that's why I like to bring it out here on our in this class, in this presentation, so you can understand. And then seal everything, especially on masonry surfaces. A lot of contractors will come tell you, oh, it's labor. You don't need to spend that money on labor. A sealer is going to be about 25% the cost of the amount of paint and 25% the cost of paint. But it's a bonding agent. It's going to make sure that the coat that you put, the paint that you put on there, protects your building at the best possible for the most long length of time. So make sure you have to understand that, and then understand what is warrantyable or not. A claim, oh, my building's not going to get dirty, is not a warrantyable item. It's a claim, and understand that. So when you're in this, when you're talking about and interviewing the paint manufacturers, ask those questions, make sure they understand that. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that here. Paint 101. One of the things that when we look at paint, all paint is not equal. Just because you get a gallon of paint, set it on the table, it is not equal. I like wine, and one of my hobbies is wine. And hey, I've been to Trader Joe's, and a $2 bottle of wine. It's not bad, but usually it's not as good as a $20, $25 bottle of wine. Because again, the ingredients, the time, the protections that are made to put into that bottle or into that wine is completely different. And the same thing hands with paint. Paint, I've got a whole class on this thing, and I'll offer that class here in a little bit. Understand that there's different qualities of paint, and understand that different manufacturers don't line up their products to compete with each other like some of the car manufacturers do. They try to get close to each other, but a lot of the manufacturers just make the coatings on there. Your best way to be able to figure it out, and you'll get manufacturers to tell you that's not true, that's not the way it works. There's no secrets to making paint. It's been around since the caveman ages. Remember the drawings in a cave? That was paint. So it's been around a long time. Paint's pretty simple. It's there's not a lot of differences in paint itself. The difference happens though in the ingredients and the materials that you put in there, and the balance of everything working together. So understand that. And the price of a can of paint, based on how it's an open market and how things are easy to work with and understand these days, the price of a gallon of paint is going to be your best determination of the quality of that can. Because a manufacturer, and unfortunately Ben Moore gets a reputation, oh, your paint's twice as high as everyone else because we don't work with stores. The manufacturing process is very simple, and the materials, we pretty much buy materials from pretty much the same suppliers. So the labor wise is about the same thing. There's not that cost difference in itself. And understand too that the cost of paint, I just mentioned it before, the cost of paint on a project is only going to be about 15 to 20%, no more than that. The rest of the 80% is covering is covering the labor for putting it on, the cost of lifts and other materials, and then the profit that the contractor is going to be making. So 20% of the 20% of the cost of the job is in your material. So why cheat out on 20% to save a few bucks when the labor, regardless of the material that you're putting on there with, is going to be the same. You're going to go through the same process, the same preparation, and so forth. So it's not going to be a tremendous amount of money. Everything that you could save is important nowadays, and I understand that, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater just to save a few bucks. And it's always important to be able to understand that. And we can, when you interview the contract or the supplier, they'll be able to talk to you about that itself. One of the things that we look at when you're looking at the paint, you make sure that the supplier is going to understand how, and the contractor, how much paint they could put on at one time. Each can of paint, this is just excerpts from a technical data sheet. Each can of paint has a theoretical coverage per gallon of paint itself. I could take a gallon of paint without adding a drop of water to it and make it cover close to 3 times that amount that they have on there without adding on there. What we try to, because what it'll do is that you won't put the paint on as thick as it should be, and then it won't give you the protection it will. You'd see that we talk about the wet film thickness. When you put a coat of wet paint on the surface, it needs to be put on wet at a certain thickness so that when it dries, it'll dry to a certain thickness and give your substrate the protection that it needs. That little gauge that I have on there, that's what we call a wet film thickness gauge. And that helps you determine the thickness of a coat of paint when it's put on when it's wet. And then there are other items that you could check that will help you look at the dry film thickness of the coating. So make sure you understand that. Sealer, that's a very important part. We touched about this before. You get a lot of contractors say, hey, you pass your hand over top of the wall, there's no chalk, we don't need sealer. Again, sealer is not about selling more material. It's about making sure that the coating that you're going to put on top is going to work the best way it possibly can. putting a sealer is going to allow you to do that. And it's also going to help forgive some of the preparation issues that you do with, and it's going to give you much better adhesion to it. One coat coverage, I get this all the time. One coat coverage is not guaranteed by any manufacturer. It's impossible to, because again, going back to the millage rate, it's about how the paint is being applied, if the surfaces are not being sealed, and how it absorbs. There's a lot of different variables that will prevent a coat of paint from covering in one coat. So that's why we always say one coat coverage is not guaranteed by the warranty. Most warranties ask for a coat of sealer and a coat of paint for coverage. I mean, to get the warranty, but it doesn't guarantee coverage. So make sure that you understand that, and the contractor understands that. The biggest thing that I like, kind of the guideline that I use, if you're going to change colors, just plan for an extra coat of paint, because the last thing you want to do is to hire a contractor. They're working on the job and they put on the coat of sealer and they put on the coat of paint, and you could see right through it. That's not going to leave you very happy, and that's not going to make a building that's not going to make the owners very happy, that they could see through the coating itself. So I always like to make sure, and then to get a surprise that, hey, we went with the best proposal, but oh, wait a minute, we need another coat of paint. So now that proposal, the contractor's got you by the throat. Then he or she could actually charge pretty much whatever you want. What are you going to do? Ask the contractor to leave and bring someone else in? So that's why it's always important that if you just be safe, and you could always do it as an option, so that if it doesn't need it, well, then the price is not on the contract itself and you could get away with it. But I always strongly recommend if you're changing color, put on a coat of sealer and 2 coats of paint. Okay. Even when you go on doors and so forth like that, any color change itself. All right, project management. Now we've talked for about 45 minutes. And we haven't even mentioned contractors or anything like that. This is where you're going to start talking about contractors, and this is the key to knowing if you're going to have a good job or not. Everything else we talked about is about education, getting to know the answer before the question is asked, so that way you could sift through, and this is where it's going to start to work. The first thing you want to do after you start painting, if you're in a building, if you don't already have an engineer, you're going to need to select an engineer. I've got a document that helps you, the questions to ask a structural engineer when you're interviewing them, so that they could tell you. You can kind of help select engineers and so forth, but it's important to vet them and understand them. Understand how they work a job. Understand, are they going to take responsibility for everything or not? I always say that it's always good for an engineer to help you run the job, but make sure that you're involved in the job from the get-go, in the meetings and so forth. Things get done better, things get done easier, and you have an understanding, so you won't have any surprises afterwards. So do that with engineers. Look at their references. And again, I do that all the time. Everybody laughs, well, they're not going to put a bad reference. You want to make a bet? A lot of times when they put a reference in, and maybe a year or two later, that job goes south, and they forget to put that in. The same thing goes with contractors. That reference could all of a sudden maybe not be a good reference. Do Google reviews. Check on them themselves. And regardless of who you check with, if you're going to hire an engineer, the salesman or the owner might be the project supervisor. A lot of times they're not. If there's going to be someone else, interview the project supervisor. Make sure that you're going to be they're going to be that person on site that's going to work with you, and make sure that the job is being done. It's going to work to get the process done. And if you can't get along with them, or there's not a good communication between the board or the president or the property manager and the contractor, it could cause a lot of problems. So meet the project supervisor to be able to understand that. So again, I've got an article that we could send to you as well. Here we are, 46 minutes into the presentation. We're talking about now you select the painting contractor. With buildings that need concrete work, one of the things that has happened is that the general contractor that is going to be doing the concrete work, that's going to be specified by the engineer that tell them to do that. A lot of those general contractors, or we call them restoration contractors, will have a painting division to do the work at the same time. That's nice, because what ends up happening is that generally the scaffolding or any type of material to put the building, to fix the building is being done at the same time. So there's not a double cost. You could separate the two with the restoration and painting, but what's going to end up happening is you're going to have to get somebody to come back in there and do all this and do all the setting up and so forth. So go through that. I have a questionnaire as well on how to select a painting contractor with the questions you need to ask in an interview. And the same thing as I asked from before, meet their foreman or meet their project supervisor so that you can understand, and ask them if that supervisor is going to be on site all the time and whether they're going to be working or they're going to be supervising. A lot of times you just have a guy that's just a worker and they said, oh yeah, he's the guy who's in charge. And half the time he's not paying attention to what everyone else is doing. And then of course, ask your paint manufacturer rep for references as well of what we've done good works with. So we're running out of time, so let's go through that. The biggest thing that we want to talk about here is have a pre-job meeting. So you've gone through, you vetted the manufacturer, you work through the colors, you understand the colors. And it's always a good idea before, because of that issue I told you about, if you're going to change colors, you might need a second coat of paint. Work on getting colors. That's why work with your manufacturer, select your manufacturer. They usually will supply you with a color consultant. Then they select the colors and then determine that you're going to need 2 coats or not. So that way, when you go to a contractor, the specification is already built that, hey, I need 2 coats of paint. No questions about it. I don't want to hear that you could cover it or not cover it and so forth, and follow the specs. Before the project starts, then we have a pre-job meeting. It's always a good idea to do that. This is where I forget the saying how it goes, where we start working. This is where the real work begins. And you're going like 15 minutes in and you're only going to start, we're talking, this is where the real work with. All that work that you do before, all that studying, if you don't have, first of all, the proper project management, all that work could be for naught, and it could actually send your work to go downhill. So what you want to try to do is when you're have a pre-job meeting, and essentially that's all the players, the engineer, the painter, the project supervisor, and so forth, you start discussing all the details in the job. One of the things that we do recommend is that inspections on a regular basis is being made. And you're saying, why? They have a contract. And well, have we all been through contracts? And does everybody who signs a contract do exactly what they say they're going to do? So that's human nature. And a lot of times they do, but they make mistakes. So it's a good way to make sure. So have this pre-job meeting, get the logistics done, when you're going to meet, how often you're going to meet, who's going to be the contact person, what part of the building or the HOA you're going to start in, where you're going to put your where your trailers, where you're going to put, all your storage equipment, what is it going to look like at the end of the day, what time you're going to work. There's just a ton of questions to ask. So you want to be able to ask all those kind of questions and get that set up so that everybody's on the same page. So as this project begins to move forward, there is no surprises. And again, in every big project, you're always going to find a surprise. There's always going to be something that's going to come up that's not a surprise. So going back to working with, selecting your contractors and your engineers, work with someone that that you think is going to be comfortable to work with, that's going to understand that and going to be able to work through that and kind of get that done for you. So that's important to do that. Inspections. This is determined during the pre-job, but in a regular inspection of the work is important. As a paint representative, I usually go at least once a week. I have some of my associates, they'll go maybe more than 1 to 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the proximity or the pace of the work that's getting done. And the idea behind that is just to make sure, first of all, you're keeping everyone accountable. You're making sure that everyone is sticking to the script that was planned, that everyone is doing what they're doing. The last thing you want to do is to paint a building like you see the one in the picture there. And all of a sudden, if you wait till the end of the job and start looking, you're going to say, hey, caulking wasn't done. Hey, wait a minute, but the railings were supposed to be painted, and all varieties of things. So this allows you to do course corrections as the job goes on, so there's no surprises. And inspecting a building like that is next to impossible all at one time. So contractors are going to be doing, even in HOAs, they're going to be doing maybe 6 to 10 homes at at a time. So you could look at that. instead of the whole, say if you're in a 500 home community, look at all 500 at one time, and on a building to look at the drops as you go along. So these kind of things, be able to make sure you understand that it's getting done properly. And then the parties all understand the specs. You understand that everyone's doing their part. There's no surprises. Everyone's doing how they're supposed to work, and it makes it easy to work with itself. And then, of course, at the final inspection, you want to make sure that, again, first of all, does the building look right? If all the touch-ups are done, everything is done, are all the releases of liens taken care of, all the payments done? Again, remember those construction liens, the Florida construction lien law. You want to make sure your suppliers are paid, so that so the building doesn't have to receive a lien, because the lien is very nasty. It can prevent anybody from selling a unit in a building or in an HOA. So make sure you understand all that. Make it the warranties issued, and understand that warranties, and to have digital copies of all that. That make sure that all the touch-ups are done, and that any other outstanding concern is identified at that time. And that's usually the best thing to be able to do, and to get it done, and that final inspection, and make sure that everybody is the job is complete and everybody's happy to move on. So at the end, kind of as a review, remember, paint doesn't last forever. You're not going to get a paint job that's going to last for 10, 15, 20 years, or I'm sorry, they will last for 10 years, but sometimes 15, 20 years, not in our environment. Just imagine parking your car out in one spot and get sun all day long. What do you think that car is going to look like in 10 years or 15 years if you don't wash it, clean it, and get redone? As I said before, prepare for the next paint job when the last one ends. Especially nowadays, it's a lot easier to do that with a digital age. Everything can be put on digital. And again, be the responsible partner in this thing, and have it available for the next phase of property management and board membership. Because think about if you're doing in those roles now, and there was nothing left for you. You kind of look back on like, well, people should have done something better. Well, be that person to do the right thing. SB4 is not going away. Again, people always ask me, when do I paint? If you're starting to get some chalking on the paint, and again, I can tell you why, when you start to see some chalking on the building, that building needs to get repainted. So that's a good indication when that happens. The planning allows you to budget appropriately. Remember to do a paint committee, understand the warranty coverage and what that covers and what it does not cover, so that everybody's on file. And again, just be careful and just to understand it. So as you can see, as we've gone through this entire process, if you do every piece, or at least some of these pieces together, and get that answer before the question is asked, you're picking the right people, you're making the smarter choices, and you're doing the right thing. So these are some of the things that I always like to think about. So that's what we do here. So that's the end of the presentation. I appreciate it. I'm going to stop share here for a little bit, and then let's get into some questions and answers. And I'll run through here, and we'll start to ask. Whoops, let me get out here. All right. Jeff Heffer, it says it's necessary to provide a scope of work form for vendors providing quotes. I like for the owner to provide that scope of work, so that the owner tells the painting contractor what they need, and working with different suppliers, they will help you build that scope. Some engineers will help you build that scope as well. From a reserves planning perspective, and again, Hikari, stop me if we run out of time here. Is there a rule of thumb for useful life of painting outside the masonry walls of single-story home condominiums located in the mid-state Florida? And again, Florida is pretty much a tropical state. So the angle of the sun is different than the angle of the sun that we get up north. So the life of a coating in South Florida is not going to last, in Florida is not going to last as long as you're up north. So again, a good rule of thumb, you don't, if you're using an HOA, an 8 to 10 year cycle is what you want to work with, because generally some of the coatings that are used on HOAs are not the same quality that are used on the bigger buildings. On the bigger buildings, you're pretty much stuck until you're doing your every 10-year assessment. And a lot of times, if you're a 30-year-old building and you have to do some concrete work, pretty much you're going to have to do concrete work in the next 10 years. So that paint cycle is going to match that 10-year cycle of doing the work itself. How long should paint last? Again, we're talking about that. If the paint is applied correctly, and remember I showed you about the millage and how thick the coat of paint is. If you have an 8-year warranty or 10-year warranty, that coating should last you that length of time. The problem that ends up happening is that you start getting colors, or you start getting paint failing because it's not applied correctly. 90%, 80 to 90% of the complaints I get, and I'm not saying because I'm a salesman, because paint's a chemical. There's no personality involved in this thing. Paint's a chemical. It'll react the way it's supposed to react. But a lot of times when you see a paint complaint, it's generally caused by substrate or a lack of preparation or improper application. So it's easy to tell, but making sure that they're doing the right amount of paint. When you're working with a supplier, ask them, are they monitoring how much paint is being applied, so they know, and is the right paint being applied? I get that all the time. Contractors don't know what paint is being done, so that's you have to be able to do that. Common areas and recreation areas should be painted the same thing as the community. Why have it done separately? It's going to cost you more when the contractors are there. If the contractors are already there, it's probably best to get it done at the same time. And paint, a lot of we're talking about using non-high-rise buildings and villas and single-family homes. The concept is the same. A lot of times they're being painted at the same time. So a lot of the principles that we talked about here pertain to HOAs and single-family homes and everything like that. Hurricane season. We're talking about hurricane season. What is the best month to paint? The ideal time would be to paint in Florida is going to be January. That's a great time, but again, that's the time when most of our neighbors from the north are home and staying in their home down here. So that's generally not. But painting in Florida is a 24/7, it's a 24/7, 365 thing. You can pretty much paint every day of the year. We have a pretty good climate. If it rains, most of the coatings that are being used nowadays, they will dry within an hour to an hour and a half. Most painting contractors, they don't want to, if there's rain in the forecast, they can't cancel the day because they'll never get the job done. But what they'll do is that most of the time the rain comes at certain times. You can look at the weather forecast and you could tell when when the rain's going to hit. So they'll try to work up to that time, about an hour and a half before, or they can do pressure cleaning and do some other things. So do maybe some, if you're in a building, do some stairwells and so forth at that time. So you can pretty much start it all the time. So if you're going to just make sure that because of hurricane season, the contractors sometimes do have if there's a hurricane warning or a watch, you have to remove the equipment from the building. There's a charge for that. So when you're interviewing contractors, make sure you understand what charge they have for if a hurricane comes up like that. So engineers want us to add a waterproof membrane to our concrete balconies and walkways. This wasn't done when the building was built 31 years ago. Why can't maintaining a good painting regime be sufficient? That's a really good question. We run into that all the time. Floor paints are a little bit different animal than wall paints. A good paint job is not going to waterproof that floor for you. When you start putting a waterproof membrane on a concrete balcony or a walkway, it's a different product. It's going to be thicker. It's going to be made to walk on. It's going to move a little bit better than what a latex floor paint's going to be. And there's a difference between the two. Yes, a good paint job will be able to help you keep water out, but it's not going to waterproof that. So an engineer knows that, and they're going to recommend the products that are made for that. Waterproofing membranes are expensive. They're a different product, so they will be able to do a different product like that. And then the last questions I'll list here is a notice to owner public record? No. From my understanding, and ask your attorney for this to make sure the idea is that they have to be mailed. The notice to owner has to be mailed by written, but you'll have to sign off on the mail to get it, to make sure that that you did receive it. But that's going to be your only notification. So make sure that in your office that if they've received that is given to the person who's actually cutting the check, so they can understand that and make sure that do that. And then those will be the last one. Should you request a list of material suppliers and subcontractors before they start the project, absolutely. We talked about that throughout the project. Vet your material supplier first. Vet them and understand it, and let them, because again, the warranty comes from them. So make sure they are writing the specs for you, and that they will do everything for you, and we'll go from there. So the rest of it, I know I'll tell you what, let's what surface prep we should talk about. Again, let the manufacturer tell you to tell the contractor. Don't let the contractor tell you how to prepare the surface. They're not issuing the warranty. You are. So make the manufacturer. So make sure they're doing that. Aluminum soffits can be painted. Painting vinyl is tricky. You have to use some certain colors. You have to be careful with it. So I'm going to go ahead and call it at this point. If anyone has any questions, please, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm a salesman. I'm going to try to sell you, but at the same time, I respect your time and respect and I will answer questions for you and not bother you or anything like that along the line. But in case you do need anything in the future, by all means, call me or email me, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. And we're doing this. All right.
Thanks for watching. For more great educational content, click the subscribe button now.